Hello, good viewer, I'm the Angry Spork, little-known comic reviewer and big old dork. Still looking at The Brave and the Bold by J. Michael Straczynski, with a pairing you may have never thought you'd ever see. The king of the oceans, valiant and proud, defending his realm with a hellish demon unbowed. If you thought last week's pairing was of unconventional cred, let's see if this issue makes us want to turn the page, or turn our heads. Issue 32's cover takes us under the sea, Arthur and Etrigan outside an old city. One looking back and the other to the side. It seems they forgot where they parked their ride. Artists joining JMS today will be Jesus Saez and Trish Mulvihill. We begin at night where two cops interrupt an unsettling sight, a coffin being unearthed by a man, with a reason he offers. Could he possibly next say,
"Is there a problem, officers?"
This is Whitford Crane, friend of the deceased, whom he insists would want him to know, and explains they worked on fishing boats together, until 5 years ago. His pal Phil drowned back then, and recently Crane nearly did as well, when a sudden storm capsized his ship, while his fellows were pulled by oddly shaped creatures on an unwanted and fatal watery trip. Whitford made it to a small isle, after a few hours, and saw a familiar Aquaman and an unfamiliar demon, clearly of hellish power. Etrigan's PR team do their best, but it's hard to put a positive spin on someone from Satan's backyard. After Crane explains the strange thing he saw, Arthur Curry decides to bring him with an expression less than sunny. Then the demon grabs the man's throat like he owes him money. Enchanted with gills and defense from the ocean depths, he follows the monarch with reverence into the waters cold as ice. Because you don't want him to have to tell you twice. Leading them to where his ship was wrecked, swimming lower without strain, they saw creatures distorted, nightmarish, and not of this plane. The cause is some force that tries to enter our world through the sea every few years, with Etrigan and Aquaman promising to stop it at all cost, lest worlds below and above are seared. This evil is strong, and goes unnamed since the distance to it is short. So the enemy of the day is Lord Voldemort? Before them was something of indescribable fright, an ancient-looking city that somehow could have also sprung up overnight. It hurt to gaze upon, but seemed to stretch beyond what eyes could see, and populated by walking corpses, like a wetter version of World War Z. It's explained to Crane those lost at sea are among the cannon fodder waiting, as well as offspring from forced human-demon mating. At the risk of throwing unnecessary shade, I don't care for this reboot of The Little Mermaid. With no normal aquatic creature willing to lend aid at this scary location, Arthur instead opts for someone from the enemy's vocation. He wrestles a beast larger than himself, and it's one tough sucker, but with some telepathic "my thoughts are your thoughts,"
I too must be Vulcan as a motherfucker.
The struggle is soon over, the minion now tamed and brought low, and Aquaman tells the others to wait till he needs them. As for when that'll be, they'll know. Great job, Curry, you keep nice and vague about all this stuff, because we know this average dude who's new to all this certainly hasn't been traumatized enough. Using his stolen pawn as cover into enemy territory, the king spots tens of thousands of undead soldiers like some grim allegory, surrounding a portal enormous and round, and from it was emerging a creature of horror that would make one's mind become unsound. A collective of flesh and tentacles on an interdimensional transit, but that was only a small part of it. Revealed the way an iceberg only shows you 10% of its mass. Except here, the monster's self-conscious from being teased in high school gym class. Whether he was frozen in horror and then got spotted, or just got fed up with how this story was plotted, Aquaman started throwing hands, but underwater alarms brought more foes for him to face in this soggy army of the damned. Whitford asked if they should help since Arthur is facing this all by himself. As if aware of something the human didn't know, the demon's reply was, "Oh, oh, 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 oh. No, 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 no." Call me crazy, but Etrigan's rhymes feel pretty lazy. Missed me, after I had dissed thee. Present-day Whitford mentioned how Aquaman controls all underwater life, not sure if the patient officers understand what that means. An abundance of animals from every square mile in all directions, heeding their monarch's psychic command, collects an impressively sized team. I'd never seen anything like it in my whole life, and God is my witness, I hope to never see it again. As it is, I can't eat sushi and no longer trust the Gorton's fisherman." The undead approached Etrigan, who unleashed fiery breath, which should remind you kids, halitosis can cause death. One straggler grabbed Crane by the throat, who thought this was the end, but saw the attacker was the reanimated body of Philip, his friend. He begged to be destroyed, allowed to be at peace, and snagged Crane's necklace when Etrigan pulled him back to make this reunion cease. With a pathway opened by the loyal sharks and whales, the three allies make haste so their mission would not fail. Crimson Cthulhu was almost fully unleashed, yet telepathically offered the mortals to align with him in exchange for all the land in the world, every nation, and I assume every beach. But since Arthur's already king of 70% of the planet, this was a poor real estate deal, so he told it to cram it. Now is the demon's turn, using an incantation to make the kaiju burn. Despite all the terror Whitford was forced to see, this did reignite his love of calamari. The menace was gone, so too his empire, though stragglers remained to be stopped lest they cause any further ire. Demon and King promised to do this again when next they require each other's aid, and the latter opined that if the world knew they were the main defense against the night gods, they'd... What, suggest getting help from Green Lantern and Zatanna, Wonder Woman, Dr. Fate, and any other superhero who'd wanna? Yes, please, keep it just the two of you, despite the problem stemming from your numbers being too few. But Whitford's knowledge of events is a concern, so he's given a telepathic command that this was a bad dream. The fisherman later blacked out, awakening on shore, with people looking at him like the cops are now, like he was a few chunguses shy of a meme. Awful nice of these officers to listen so long to this yarn, though maybe they were stalling for backup to take Whitford to the funny farm. To prove to himself and all his experience was real, he busts open the coffin while the armed cops merely shout against it in a real lack of zeal. Inside is the proof to confirm his tale, his St. Christopher medallion in his dead friend's hand, plucked in the midst of the battle that took place in the place that's not space, sky, or land. Crane is relieved Phil is no longer enslaved, that in the end his soul was saved. The comic ends on its stars, who stand without falter, fighting ancient evils using fire and water. A royal hero, ever courageous, and a demon's ferocity that can be called...
outrageous!
That was Brave and the Bold 32, featured on this show of mine. I just hope I wasn't too annoying. You know, speaking exclusively in words that sound alike. Dang it! Couldn't stick the landing. You just couldn't stick the landing! So we have another unique matchup that one might not immediately consider. Outside the Justice League, I'm not sure these guys have spent a lot of time together. However, their threat relates to both their realms, being mystical in nature and using water to enter this dimension because it's easier in a way, likened to water birth. Unlike previous issues of the run, the story is largely from an outsider's perspective. A fisherman who's heard a lot about Aquaman, naturally, knows of these extreme circumstances, but not personally accustomed to them. Happenstance requires Whitford join them for a time, but how close he gets seems rather reckless on the heroes' part. They gave him the ability to survive the intense fathoms of the ocean, but it seems he did his job leading them where they needed to go. Sure, he's the framing device and kind of an emotional tether for the audience, since his friend was kind of involved, but our observer is in a lot more danger than he needed to be. Seriously, why could Arthur not have called him a dolphin Uber before things got hairy? Crane's limited knowledge of the finer details helps keep vague how all the aquatic life that initially refused to go near the portal were convinced to join in a massive assault. One supposes this goes to show how something often mocked as talking to fish can be so powerful and effective, how the dire conditions and Aquaman's authority motivated them to follow their marching, synchronized swimming orders? You know what I mean. Etrigan can seem like he's kind of there, talking a bit, but not seeming to do that much, save for when magics are necessary, yet his overall role isn't limited to this one fight, but an ongoing conflict with some nefarious other world, meaning that by now he would know what to do and when to do it. Though if this is a cross-dimensional dance that's been going on for years with these guys, why did Squidface think he could bribe the King of the Oceans with dominion over land? Was it something he hadn't considered before and decided to try it as a Hail Mary? Or did he think that Curry was getting sick of living under the sea and was up for a trade? And I'm a little confused by Aquaman telling Crane that none of this happened. It's kind of implied he was using his telepathy to encourage him to think it was a dream or rewrite his memories or something, assuming his powers would work on him because of the fishy spell on the guy. But it remains unclear enough that maybe he was more giving him an order to not talk about this. Maybe it's the latter, because he remembered everything pretty vividly. I also gotta wonder about how his buddy ended up back in that coffin. I guess we assume the corpse was magically transported back when the Elder God was defeated. Otherwise, it means one of our protagonists personally reburied him so perfectly as to not leave any trace, and missed that shiny pendant in his hand for the patron saint of travelers. There's a great use of inks and colors to give the entire story a baleful vibe, be it selectively placed shadows that feed a darker atmosphere, or various shades of green to give the watery depths an otherworldly appearance, that despite being on Earth, it can make one feel like they're somewhere totally unfamiliar. It lends credence to Whitford's sense of awe and fear, making them all the more genuine. There are 5 splash pages in this 22-page comic, which in other circumstances may seem a bit fillery, but most of them seem pretty necessary to show the enormity of the enemy they're facing, or Aquaman's command of the sea's creatures. This comic isn't bad, has a lot going for it despite some unanswered questions, and has great art. Not the strongest in the run, but neither is it the weakest. If nothing else, it has one of those really cool examples of how powerful Aquaman can be, despite how often he's teased for his abilities. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.